Maiden name is Prince.
Go back so far.
So it's in my mom's side of the family.
He's trying to get everyone.
Where my mom's
Should
from,
recover.
initially New York and ultimately.
I think that.
Yeah. He was 101. Life had been good.
Hey, you guys, this is being recorded.
And then the keys and keys. It's got a warning.
Yeah, I don't know when she's coming in first.
I didn't need this from my narrative. So, thank you.
Always learn something new, huh?
Yeah, something new.
What's hybrid?
Because all of the public's on Zoom.
Yeah,
Okay, oh, so it's a hybrid meeting.
yes.
Yeah,
And technically, some members, and you said it was 4 had to be here, so then
right.
others could be.
Could be there, but Maury said he was coming in person and Andy said he was coming.
Oh,
How are you moving up the matters? There's no meaning appeals and all the rest.
Actually, it's been pretty quiet recently, so
quiet.
it's good, except for the last 3 weeks, they've been hammering the ledge on the house next door to me.
I was about to say, I drove by your street, what's going on next, they did a tear down, you know?
Yeah, they decided they want a basement.
Oh, so they're putting one in under the house. I mean, their house is.
The house that was there was on a slab.
Yes.
They tore it down
Oh, they tore it down.
and it was a 2,000 square foot house, 2-story. They're putting in a 3,600 square foot house and the whole thing is ledge.
So blasting.
Well, they're not blasting, they're whole hammered. I'm not sure which is worse.
I think whole hangers work. Blasting.
What is that?
It's just, you know.
Jackhammer?
Yeah.
Is that the one when they have sort of, they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And chipping off little pieces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're like drill holes and then you drill a hole.
it's painful. slow. I
Really?
mean, blasting is, you just get it done in a week's time.
Yeah, this has been 3 weeks.
And first thing, don't they like, do some radius and they take
Yeah.
pictures of
Yeah.
the neighbors?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my house is sitting on the same ledge that they're chipping at.
You feel it?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
so you're getting, did they do a pre-construction survey?
No, I'm not saying any damage,
Yeah.
to be fair.
So every time the thing goes bang, every picture on the wall jumps.
My cat is going bananas.
How long would that take, you know?
I have no idea. They decided to go deeper today.
Do they at least wait till after 8?
No.
7?
Yeah, I think they're not supposed to start till 8, but
Right.
you know, they leave at 3 on the dot. And I say to myself, okay, if you want to start at 7 and you're gonna leave at 3, I'm happier that way than having you stay till 4.
Right. I thought it was 7, I thought you could start.
If we have a noise control thing that is
Large construction.
8 AM to 6.
So like lawnmowers is 7, but,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Leaf blown lawnmowers,
Yeah.
that's 7.
That's
but
Oh, hammers. Now Lad is doing it, LED is doing it. You'd think they know the rules.
interesting. I didn't know he had that big roof. It must be rented.
Doesn't look like it. He has a,
Knows it is on.
yeah, he has an LED truck that comes and maintains it on site. I didn't know they did demolition.
Imagine the invoice for that.
Oh,
So can you imagine the invoice for that work?
yeah.
The owners sold their house for a pretty penny, so they have the money to invest.
They stole. Good job.
A house they lived in on Old Neck Road,
So they just,
the new owners. They wanted a view of the harbor.
Can that interfere with you?
No.
You're above them, I guess.
Yeah, they're off to the, yeah, they're to the west. And they're only going up 2 stories,
Okay,
except I think that
so
you can put a basement,
Well-
it can only, it has to go down 4 feet, I think, to be a basement. It can
Oh,
only,
does
I think it only has to be underground 4 feet. So if I were them, that's what I would do, make the house a little higher.
and when I was here, we were on the 3rd floor.
Yeah.
Is that where?
And their lower level is lower than my lower level.
They told you how long they think for the whole thing?
He sent an email a week or so ago and said a couple of days.
No, I mean, the whole
Oh,
project.
they're putting the foundation in this fall. They go to Florida in the winter and they're not gonna start construction till the spring. Right now, there's a 6-month delay on windows and doors.
Wow.
I ordered doors on April 1st. They have not yet been installed. They're here, they haven't been installed.
You know, that.
But they're here,
you know,
at
that's
least you
the
got
kind of
that
thing.
far.
I went to the Red Cross in Danvers to give blood a couple weeks ago. They do the preliminary stuff, blood pressure, the pin prick, the whole thing. I lie down on the table and they go, we don't have any bags. I was like, That's how bad this supply chain is. The Red Cross doesn't have bags.
But they put you through all of the.
And they did, they couldn't have, right, they couldn't have told me, they couldn't have sent me a text thread. I had to drive 20 minutes, spend 20 minutes doing all right. Yeah, that's what. Just, you know.
Can you hear us, Tom?
I can hear you. Hi, folks.
Thank you. Always get nervous.
Very fancy setup.
I know. The first time, hi Andy.
So
The first time I had a meeting on it, I couldn't get it going.
Oh.
We had to call two from home to get it going.
Andy, good morning, nice to see you. Good to see you. In person, that's right, in person. That's why I thought it was worth repeating my name.
Right. I recognize you immediately.
We're just waiting for Maury.
Yes, because of this.
I don't know how to use the other one.
The other room requires 1623 at this point. We haven't been trained on that system. It's a more sophisticated system.
Okay, you have to have a separate computer to do the Zoom piece,
Oh,
whereas this is all in one.
Right. This is
This
basically
is-
a computer, if you want to say.
Yeah,
I see,
so it's easier for me to cope with
yes. much easier.
until people want to start coming in. Have to use the bigger room.
it's not like you're standing room only anyways.
Do we get a pretty good following calling in on the meetings, you know, around? It becomes very
On
possible,
certain meetings, yeah, we've had 150 people.
yeah, so it's
The
really
40
helping.
The
get
40B
people-
one, we have huge, we have big
There's
numbers.
big numbers of the summary.
ZBA, we can have
So
a
this.
lot
will
of people depending on what's.
Continue to be needed. The Zoom.
So I think this is our future.
Yeah.
And there's no question for any kind of meeting, the Zoom aspect added, like, because it's just easier to be home and.
Yeah.
Click your button and.
I'd be happy to stay on Zoom forever. So then I wouldn't get to see you guys.
Well, this is a rare moment for me. You actually see, you know, and particularly Mike Pratt. Really,
Every time you say my name, you have to say, comma, not my cousin.
not my cousin. I think you've gotten at least 6 emails. At least, that you've intended for someone else.
Family events, you know.
Yes, exactly. Family events, yes.
My son is also Michael Pratt, different middle name.
Mhm.
He's he just started freshman year at Tulane. And the name of the quarterback for the Tulane football team is Michael Pratt.
Who are you?
He's not doing
Am
I in the right place?
Yeah.
You are.
Good to see
Look at
you.
this. Can't wait. Wow.
All drawing.
See you in the distance. Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right. We were chit chatting. So we have all of the members here. With that, I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order at 7:05 PM on Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. I have with me Dean Hodis, if I pronounced it right, Maureen Creighton, Peter Twining, Andy Olderman, and Michael Pratt. And I'm Sarah Melish.
There you
Okay. So the first item I wanted to go over was the committee. Many of you know, but maybe not everyone. Mark Weld has submitted his resignation from both the Finance Committee and the CPC. Basically due to personal reasons. His term is up in June of 2023. So he's been out recruiting. And he convinced Tom Parkins, who's on Zoom, to submit an application. So we're hoping that the Board of Selectmen will approve him to fill out Mark's term. So I asked him to join the meeting tonight, just so you can get a sense of what we do. And of course, by the time Board of Selectmen have to review his application on November 7th, maybe he'll decide he doesn't want to be here. And then the other thing is on the CPC, Mark was the Finance Committee representative on the CPC. Therefore, we need to vote for a new representative. And did we have a formal vote?
I thought you put it in.
Right,
I
but,
haven't to read, I haven't to read all the issues.
well, no, I got pushback
go.
that says I need to send something to the Board of Selectmen that we voted on it.
Oh, well, yeah. But you already voted on it. Didn't you vote?
Okay,
I thought you voted.
okay.
I mean, if you wanna just reaffirm,
Do we want to reaffirm the vote that Andy will serve on the CPC
Sure, why
and
not?
the Finance Committee?
Second.
Hello.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yay, Andy, thank you.
Just the one man.
The next item on the agenda is the town accountant update, to go over the fiscal 22 fourth quarter report and the status of reserves. And then the fiscal 23 Q1 report, and then year-to-date fire department budget. Andrea.
Right, it's not the FY 22 quarter four report, as well as the FY 23 quarter one. Are there any questions or?
No, I have some questions on the 2023 quarter one, but nothing on the 2022 year end,
Nothing I'm trying to do.
right? So the only question is the impact on the reserves.
Yeah, I mean,
And do we now know, do we now have a,
Yeah, so we actually just got certified free cash yesterday, which came in at 3.6 million. So that added to our 1.8 for stabilization. This is about 5.7.
is that about what you expected?
That's a little more than I expected.
That's what I thought.
yes.
Yes,
Significantly, right? I mean, we were targeting 11.5%,
yes.
and I can't do that math top of my head, but
So we're at 14.3%.
there we go.
That's a nice turnaround. That's.
Right, I thought we'd keep it all up.
You were gonna hear about things how I spend it on.
I just, comment, the 727,000, the combination of coming in over on revenue and under on expenses.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a big number.
Well, also impacted by the fact that like last year, our free cash had been reduced by our FEMA storm grant reimbursement deficit. So we're still, doing this in the preventative projects, and we hadn't closed it out yet. So we closed it out as of June of FY 22 with a deficit of almost like $500,000. But this year, BOR said, no, all FEMA money, is not gonna hit your free cash. Oh, so last year it was about 300,000. Maybe like 260,000 we got hit with free cash. So this year, having that money back in as well kind of swings it as well.
And it looks like a big difference on the revenues, excess revenues was recreation. And I'm assuming that's because we had cut it back because of COVID,
Yes.
or beet juice.
I
That's
guess-
almost 200,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's that plus, you know, it's the excise taxes, it's all the usual suspects. I guess, you know. I'm sure I sound like a broken record, but I just, you know, we need to tighten the forecasts, in my opinion, you know, and I understand we can't get too aggressive because we don't want it to go badly, but. I can see that there's a lot of room between getting a little tighter and too aggressive, you know.
If it does go that way, if it goes negative, does that come out of the general fund? Just as it goes in, it's a surplus.
Oh, if we have a shortfall in a given year,
Yeah, well, technically, like, I have to watch it and make sure that, if we start coming in with revenues that are, much lower than we expect or estimated, I really stop spending, so I don't.
I was correct,
So,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think,
You have to stop the spending, you have to cut back on spending.
yeah, so you don't have a year-end deficit of spending.
I forget the number, how much is in our FinCom account? 180, 170.
This year we did 210. for reserve, yeah.
So, I mean, that would be an initial
Stopgap,
Correct.
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
Like if we're,
That's what we want to
you know,
do.
a little off, obviously, we can, adjust.
and then I think the other stopgap is at the April 1st town meeting. One could do a supplemental appropriation if you were running a deficit for a given year.
And I think if that goes to the voters, that's a majority vote, as opposed to if we have to dump into stabilization, it has to be 2/3.
Right.
So we can do that, and then we have, 200K roughly, that we can use up to 2 weeks after the end of the fiscal year, like mid-July.
Yeah, we have May 1st to July 15th to move money between buckets.
I mean, I guess my, high level, it's the same thing every year, the revenues come in higher than expected. Some of our expenses come in lower than expected, which is a good thing, but that's actually more surprising than the revenues, because for revenues, take the excise, take prior year actual, and we know it's gonna be significantly higher, so my opinion would be, that would be an area we look at to, tweak up, estimated revenue from the excise tax.
For expenses, we really have to kind of, the economies of scale. We did like a training on combis, which is a state purchasing program, things like that, and the price change was so significant. So it's really easy. If I did an order with Staples and I put in like, one normal order, it was like over $300, like one of the state websites, like 150.
What, I was looking for some of the big items on expenses, and I think I saw the trash was 2 areas, right?
That's what's contracted.
No, but they came in below.
The revenue came in high because that's selling those bags. You
Right,
never know how many you're gonna sell.
but then on the flip side, expenses came in below forecast, correct? Okay, so that's kind of, that's a one-off because of the new vendor, I guess.
And I think we made that correction this year.
Yeah.
So we have more notice about this year. Yeah,
On the stuff.
energy costs. In particular, fuel, energy.
Sure, I'm actually more focused on the revenue side than the expenses,
Yes.
that, I give you your rope
Yeah.
on the expense side, but on the revenue side, again, even if I just stick with, the motor vehicle excise, like,
Sure.
we consistently come in
Yeah.
way low, so let's just be fair. I really don't think there's a risk, if we're reasonable and, pick the right number, that we're not gonna come in.
Well, I think when we get through to the 2024 budget, we probably need to sit down and look at the revenue side from the 2022 year end revenue for what we've included in 2023. And kind of look at it more carefully, kind of see
Sure.
what makes sense. We can just kind of fine tune.
Yeah, I remember us having discussions in March of 2020, right? And we were thinking, oh man, COVID's gonna hit the economy, people aren't gonna pay their property taxes, nobody's gonna buy a new car, there's gonna be, and the reality is what?
Life goes on.
Life goes on, and it's not.
We're white collar town.
Exactly. People are still gonna get the new cars. That's the reality.
So I think the bottom line of what you're saying is to be a little more. A little more, word aggressive is not the right word, but a little more careful in it.
I would say fair and honest,
Yeah.
reasonable.
Less conservative.
Less conservative.
Yeah,
That's fair.
because we were conservative again on the motor vehicle excise for this year,
Correct.
Yes.
2023, yeah.
I don't think we knew what the beach was gonna do either. No.
Are there formulas for doing that, the excise, or do you just go from previous year's experience?
I know from previous years, sometimes I look at how many
Number,
numbers
yeah.
of bills were issued and average number of bills and things like that, but.
But I think to that point, maybe what we do is we look at the past 4 years and look at what percentage above prior year, you know, like, right? It probably comes in 30% higher than prior year or 20%, you know, but there's probably some average, you know what I mean?
Because people aren't buying as many new cars now, because you can't get them.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think actually the people that ordered them like last year are now getting them
This year.
now.
Oh, okay.
So, something to keep in mind next year.
Okay. So the Q1 2023. It seemed to me like we had quite a few areas. Seems to be coming in high.
So we expect to be about
25.
25%, right?
Except for, I think there's some expenses that are paid at the beginning of the year,
They are.
yeah, like maybe the liability insurance,
Exactly.
yeah,
And you can kind of see from, if you look at September of 2021, you
yeah.
can kind of see which line items end up doing a lot of the purchasing at the beginning of the year.
Legal professional jumps out of the hole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that was-
one will be seeking a supplement. At the special town meeting.
And so we've used up 50% of the budget. I know some of it is for the 40B. Where else are we running high on legal expenses in other areas?
It's on the planning side, a little higher.
What's that?
And
Plan?
challenges.
It actually came in below on the. Right, that's what I saw.
I'm sorry, but
Total legal came in like, I don't know, 15 or 16 grand below
2022.
for 2022. Yeah.
We added money.
we did add up to it.
But I assume we, for this fiscal year, we must have estimated like flat increase, right?
We increased it.
Not a lot.
For you done 2023, it's all not, we don't get 104, which seems low to me.
So we dropped it.
So we went from 80 to 95.
I'm talking total fiscal year.
Right, so
The
the budget for the fiscal year, for the professional services, 95.
95. And last year we budgeted 80. If you're looking at a higher number, that's because I included either like carryovers and also the amended.
And then looking at higher.
items of the budget.
Okay. Because I was looking at much higher now.
Yes. So like if you look in the cell, in the Excel, you'll see the numbers added together and that's, you can see 95 and
I'm sure you'll see what I didn't hear then.
95
Yes.
in there, so. You're looking
Oh, the revised budget is 107.
Exactly.
So there's 12,000 carryover.
From last year. Okay. So the revised budget includes carryover numbers.
Correct.
Yes.
Is it possible to make an adjustment to this to show the original budget approved?
A separate column.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just so we don't get so confused.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And the technology element is merely just a matter of things being paid for earlier in the year, then that's why the percents.
That's the new system.
Yeah,
you know,
so I'm-
No, actually.
I'm looking at some legal professionals. We came in at 160 versus 171, so like 13 grand below. This is for fiscal 22,
Okay.
Right.
but you're saying those numbers that are way big is like an amalgamation of stuff?
So in 22, we put more money into legal. We must put in 70,000.
That come out of our budget?
I don't remember we took it out of reserve or if we moved it from other.
I think we did a combination of
I
both.
think it was a
So we-
combination, yeah.
We started with 80, we carried over 6,000, and we added 85. So the carryover just means that like I didn't get the bill or I couldn't pay it until, the following fiscal year.
Okay.
So it'll show up in the price.
So I guess my question is just, we did this big up for fiscal 22. But then we kind of made the assumption that that was a weird one-off and things would come way back down.
Yeah, well, initially, but not
What
the whole
what
entire
I've asked
year.
her to do is for this 2023, is to add a column to show the budget that was approved. So we can see the difference between what was approved and what's been adjusted
Yeah.
due to carryover, because I think that makes it confusing
Definitely.
to us, because we know what we're approving and yeah.
Totally agree, but I'm saying on top of that, it's just, I'm trying to wrap my head around why we knew there was this huge number for fiscal 22, but then we assumed,
40B. You knew legal was gonna go up because of the 40B.
and then we just thought that would end, and then we go back to this more right number. Averaging long-term, whatever.
What did
We
we actually,
we didn't know what was gonna be the next step after the review, so we had expenses last spring. Not a lot for 40, but some. There were other expenses, one of the bigger drivers was personnel matter. It required a lot of legal costs and investigation.
Is that solved?
Yes.
Okay.
That is resolved. So that was probably the biggest driver of the increase in 22. And now for 23, the biggest driver is going to be the defense of the ZBA decision of the 40B.
I know I'm gonna sound like I'm contradicting myself, because I just talked about not coming in below on estimating forecast, but to me, legal would be one that I think unfortunately. I mean, it stinks, but it's gonna be high, and it's probably gonna stay high, and like you said, there's many different, it could be 40B, it could be a personnel, it could be planning,
We did
right?
really well for the past 6-7 years, but last year and this year, it's going high.
Right, and I guess what I'm saying is better to be a little high on that forecast specifically and then have the good news surprise than the other way around. Just because there is so many ways you can get dinged on legal, right? Personnel planning.
Well, on ZBA, we're seeing more appeals of administrative decisions,
Right.
which we never used to see.
Yeah, we're just, it seems like every application right now, we have to get legal advice on. It's been much busier that way.
Everyone's home and they're paying attention to what their neighbors are doing now.
so Greg, I'm just wondering if, is it make sense to budget high or with legal? Or does it make sense to budget low and correct later?
Well, so that's, yeah. So that's traditionally what we have done, is been on the lower side and then backfill as needed.
But
Um,
I would think the latter would be better, wouldn't it?
Well, let's hold off this discussion until we get to the 2024 budget.
Okay.
Okay,
But just,
Just, it's good to flag it. It wasn't an issue.
but I think we've communicated to him that.
Yeah.
To think carefully about the legal budget.
I love tightening up forecasts. I just think this is one area that it's unfortunately gonna keep going the wrong way.
I had a question, Ricky. Would, if we added or subtracted the under over from the previous year, from the revised budget, would that be what we allocated for this year? Basically, as a general rule, no, there's other
Yeah,
factors.
yeah.
Because I think the carryover
Yeah.
didn't go into free cash, whereas those bottom numbers go to free cash.
Oh, okay, okay.
I think that's the difference. Now. Police OT is way high,
It's like,
police overtime,
It is.
yes.
So we,
what's the driver?
so we usually charge overtime for like a lot of their trainings. And then we get it reimbursed from the law enforcement grant, which usually runs about $35,000. And then I transfer it as we get it in. That's what we charge it first.
Right, and we've also been down in office there since the beginning of
Somebody left,
last year.
did somebody leave or?
So part of that personnel matter resulted in a departure.
Okay,
Except that should have resulted in under in the regular person salary, not OT.
Well, it didn't because the person was on paid leave.
He's still on.
and when was that resolved?
in August.
August.
So now the paid leave is done.
Paid leave is done.
Person's gone.
Did we get a replacement? Or-
Yes, they have to go to the academy. So after they get out of the academy, then,
So when will that be?
March.
yeah, it's more.
So basically, we got another 5 months of paying IoT.
Yes,
But then they can also fill in that,
But they can
temporarily
use-
for a certain number of days.
yeah, they can use some reserve, we still have reserves that we can use. That's not always OT.
Is there a lot of overtime in like the traffic control on School Street? Is that something that gets built out of this?
No, that's paid out of
Enterprise.
this contract.
Okay, right.
And Henry, did I understand a moment ago that there's a reimbursement that affects that number? And where is it from again? The reimbursement?
It's a police law enforcement grant that we get from
I
the
see.
state.
So when I look at that overtime, I really need to look at a net number, not the number
Right.
that's there.
If you're ready to add the mark, we should go back to, hold on, talk about that.
Assuming there are other. carriers there.
I know I've asked this question before, but if we get to March and that person decides they want more excitement and goes to another town, what happens?
What person? Oh, the new person?
Yeah.
Oh,
They want more access and quiet in Manchester, what? We get stuff with that, Bill?
We do,
Step up crime level.
so we pay for
Okay.
the academy?
yes.
Okay.
How big is that?
Well, it's their salary.
That's the biggest piece.
That's the
Got it.
biggest piece.
Got it. And then, well, salary and venues.
Yeah.
For what, 5, 6 months?
I forget the. 16 weeks. I forget. 12 weeks, 16 weeks, something.
Oh, well, okay. Has that happened a lot, what Maury just said?
No, not right out of the academy. It may happen 2 years later. But usually we get a few years out of the new.
Is it at least more the excitement factor that Maury said versus a salary competition between us and Beverly and Gloucester? Like, is that less?
It's more of the excitement.
It's more than that.
So more you can see.
Sort of an interesting thing on the radio the other day about a lot of people in police departments in metropolitan areas moving to fire departments.
Yeah, 24 Boston police officers just
Yeah.
transferred to Boston Fire. And last year it was only 6, and the year before that it was 0.
You know, which is sort of interesting. I think that's more of a metropolitan thing than a town thing, but
Yeah.
I thought that's a really interesting trend.
And did they attribute particular reasons and to the
Defunding of
Police
police
profession,
and
yeah. Whole profession would have been-
Being got out and sued.
easier way to make money.
So our salaries are competitive with other towns.
Yeah, yes,
It's probably, I'm guessing it's a pretty tight range.
yeah, it's, yes.
Yeah.
Certainly the union brings that to the table. You don't hear any- You know, They do that homework pretty carefully.
And where are we on the police union contract?
Police union has another year,
Okay,
but all the other ones are up this year.
okay.
and this year would be June.
June.
So we being hit with salary increases, or
Yeah, that's gonna be a hard number
Yeah.
to nail down.
that's what I figured, yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure at the moment.
Mhm.
Crystal ball, where is the thing going next? It's really hard to tell.
Well, a lot of the employers, I think, are doing bonuses rather than salary increases. This is no gap
To
to
lock
figure out,
it in.
yeah, to figure out what's gonna happen.
Questions, there's two other items I wanted to bring up about
Okay.
the quarter one.
Yeah.
In my email, I just mentioned that like a couple areas, two other areas that I'm just concerned about, is the ZBA salaries.
Yeah.
And meetings and things like that, and then, the treasurer's office had, maternity leave that we weren't aware of when we did the FY23 budget. So she was currently using her leave time, and we hired a temporary intern to help pull and, cover the office.
So has she had the baby or?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
She's out right now.
okay, got it.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if we were talking leave before the baby. We didn't know she was having a baby. What happened?
We didn't know if it was having a baby.
I hope she knew.
Well, we have to go read the print, and I was like, well.
So that's like a 13,000.
Yeah, not the most,
13, one-off.
yes. Yeah. I just wanted to make you
Not-
aware of it
not-
now.
not each.
So I figure like she's supposed to be coming back like maybe like beginning of January or even December, and then I'll have like a final number. See what we need to fill that.
How long does somebody get paid for maternity leave in the town?
Well, it depends on their leave time, otherwise they get the 12 weeks up in the life.
Okay, okay. But they have other leave.
Yes, yes.
Got it, okay.
And she indicated that she will come back.
Are you able to find staffing and people to fill in this sort of thing? Has that been a challenge?
We've done okay so far. So this situation actually worked out quite well. Got lucky.
Yes, very lucky.
We're about to hire a new health agent. Pretty pleased with that candidate.
Is there somebody to do both?
Yes, it is. Fully certified. The whole game.
Back, isn't it?
You go. What?
Title V and health.
Yes,
So what we call the land side and the health side.
yes.
Because that was why we decided to use the ARPA funds in the 2023 budget, because it wasn't clear what type of person they were gonna hire, and that impacted the budget line items and stuff.
But it sounds as though they've achieved what they wanted, which is
I think
combined skills.
I think so. It's not a done deal yet, but I'm pretty confident that.
And then I got an email from town planners.
Yes.
Okay. Fire budget. The thing that confused me in the first quarter report is the overtime is very high, but I don't see the drop in the salaries. And I would think that if we're using overtime to fill in for people who are no longer here, that there would have been a drop in the salaries. Is it a timing issue or what?
Mr. Lopez, you wanna take that?
Well, there was a drop in the salaries, but 2 of the officers left and 2 more were promoted. So it wasn't as big a drop. But we didn't go from losing an officer to hiring a brand new firefighter to replace them. In essence, 2 other firefighters were promoted to officer positions to fill the 2 officers. So that they're lower officer grade, but it's not as big a discount as you would see from a senior officer to a junior firefighter. It was very little because the variance between a senior firefighter and a junior officer is small.
Did you have to do those promotions?
Yes. So we're currently down 3 positions. The 2 that left, and then the 1 new position that was appropriated for this year. So we've hired 3 new firefighters. They start Monday. They're all certified, experienced paramedics, but none of them have fire certifications. So they can perform EMS, but they don't count as a full firefighter with respect to our 3 on duty or 2 on duty staffing until they come back from the fire academy. The earliest fire academy I could get them into, because everybody in the state is hiring firefighters, is June 1st. So they won't be back from the academy till August 18th. So they'll be working, they'll be able to run EMS calls, they'll be able to do some fire duties. But until they have fully certified and have been through the academy, they're kind of extra on the fire side. They will still get in-house fire training, but we don't have the capabilities to give them the certifications.
So this is June 2023.
Yes, June 5th to August 18th.
And what was the dynamic that led to 2 departures?
One was a long-term employee that had health issues. He could have retired at any time. He has 39 years in. And the other one went to another department, a busier city department in the city where he lives.
2 questions.
Yes, sir.
The EMTs we have now, do they have the training in the fire? Or
Yes, everybody that's on board now is fully firefighter and EMS trained.
So we could potentially, the new people could do the EMS and the current EMS could
Yes,
potentially, but we do want to train them.
right. They'll be all trained. They'll be able to do ancillary fire duties, but they won't be as qualified as the people currently. Therefore, we don't count them towards our minimum shift strength.
Is that typical of the candidate pool out there, that people are more apt to have EMS training? than
Yes.
Fire?
There are a lot of people getting out of private EMS. And most of Massachusetts is civil service. They will take you without any training and then put you through the academies and then put you to work. Where we're not civil service, we still get to put people through the academy, but we don't have a huge cadre. Larger departments have like a single training officer that can devote to all the new candidates for 2 or 3 months, and then they're ready
I
to
see.
go.
Those in-house training for them can be sufficient, but not for us.
Yes.
We don't have that staffing.
Yes, because when they do it, at least one department I was talking to last week, their new hires are not assigned to any vehicles. They don't respond on any emergency calls. They are 8 hours a day with a training officer till he feels they're completely up to snuff, and then they go on shift as a regular firefighter.
And
Hi,
can be
Mark.
certified by the department.
No, then they're still sent to the fire
They're
academy,
still sent.
but they put them into full service sooner than the fire academy. But there are certain liabilities with that, with respect to their ability to pump, with their ability to drive apparatus. We do all that training in-house as well, but it's not to the degree that the fire academy can teach them and actually give them the pro board certification.
Where is the fire academy?
It's in Hudson, actually Stowe. There are 3. There's one in Stowe, there's one in Bridgewater, and there's one in Springfield. So there were openings in Bridgewater and Springfield a lot sooner than Stowe, yet all 3 of our new hires are coming from New Hampshire. And it's Monday through Friday with no room and board at the academies. So the option is to either go to the original academy in Stowe, that's an easier commute, or we would have to get like 10 weeks of a short-term hotel room for all three of them. They'd have to drive down from New Hampshire on Sunday night, stay there all week for the academy, and then drive home on the weekends. And that was gonna be an additional $15,000 to $20,000. Plus 2.5-hour commutes all winter long from New Hampshire did not seem
Is that what that takes, 2.5?
very feasible, depending upon whether they're going to Bridgewater or Springfield. It was about a 50-50.
So they're all in New Hampshire. When do they have to move closer?
They do not, there is no requirement to move closer.
So what's their commute time to Manchester, roughly, our Manchester?
An hour and 15 minutes. We currently have two full-time firefighters that live in New Hampshire that commute.
So a fundamental question then, so we can have the 3 on, but only 2 would be firefighter trained. And if you want to keep the 3 firefighters, then we can have 4 on. And burn through a lot of overtime.
I don't see
I
how we
mean-
can
I mean-
afford it. I mean, don't we call them mutual aid if there's a real fire?
I was gonna say, the reality, the percentage of the calls that are medical versus fire is 99 to 1,
No, it's probably 75-25. It's not 99-1.
75, 25.
Yeah, but when you're saying 25, those are not what I call
Right.
big fires.
No, they're fire calls. They're
Yeah,
not,
okay.
they're not emergency medical.
We're
calls.
responding to some of the.
Something, it might be a carbon monoxide detector activation, a smoke detector activation, a smell of smoke in the building, a gas leak. The car accident comes under medical, but. And the challenge is based on county regulations with respect to what we should be sending out of town mutual aid. They will not accept a piece with only 2 firefighters on it. So at that point, when we only have 2 on duty and there are only 2 certified firefighters, we do not go out of town to provide mutual aid. So we have missed out on a couple calls because we've only had 2 guys on duty, and other communities would have called us for mutual aid. But without 3 on the truck, it doesn't qualify as a mutual aid piece.
But we get no money for mutual aid calls.
No, nobody does. It's an agreement through all the departments in Essex County.
When we send someone on mutual aid, we have one person back.
If we have only 2 on duty, we don't send anything mutual aid. The ambulance doesn't leave, the engine doesn't leave, and the ladder doesn't leave. If we have 3 on duty and it's a mutual aid ambulance call, 2 go out of town and there's 1 left behind. So that's how, and if it's a mutual aid fire call, all 3 go on the engine and we have nobody left behind.
That's what triggers the overtime calling.
We're not getting people on call back, so usually the station is unmanned at that point. Until the unit is released from the other community and comes back. And we've spent as much as 6 hours covering another department station on a mutual aid call because they've had a large fire where we've had nobody in the firehouse covering the town.
I'm kind of surprised at the number of times we seem to be called on mutual aid to Gloucester.
Well, it's interesting, Gloucester is super busy, they're buying a new ambulance. Actually, if Gloucester's ambulances are busy, their first call is to Beauport. But Beauport also covers Rockport and Hamilton. And then if Beauport's unavailable, they call us. But there's a big problem nationwide with not enough EMTs and not enough ambulance services. When we're not in Gloucester, we're in Beverly. And that's covered by Northeast Ambulance, but they can't cover that because they're over in Salem covering for Salem. So it's happening everywhere. It's a chess game. It's who's available to go somewhere else because everybody's drawing on everybody else. The other problem is the hospital system is not working. So you could get to the hospital in your ambulance. And if they don't have a bed, that patient sits on your stretcher and your ambulance sits there for an hour until they free up a bed that you can actually transfer the patient. So while you're there, that ambulance is out of service. So it's a very systemic issue that starts with the hospital and then spreads out. And with more paramedics and EMTs leaving private ambulance services to come to fire departments, the towns that rely on the private ambulance services are having problems because those ambulance services can't field enough trucks.
Is that a compensation issue?
It's a compensation, it's a working condition, it's a retirement issue. It's a burnout issue. So,
So is there a sense for, given the scenario, of, the two guys that are coming on and not really being available, like what the budget wise, what we're probably looking at?
yeah, well, since September 1st, when we started dropping to 2 firefighters on duty, if nobody took the 3rd slot on overtime, we had 127 hours go unfilled. So there was 7 day shifts and 2 24-hour shifts that we did not have that 3rd person.
So the question here is, do we just not bother? Do we just go with 2?
I think we should just go with
Yeah.
2.
just go to two.
So you're saying when someone won't do it, well, maybe we just don't do it at all.
Keep us from doing that.
Well, the challenge with doing that is now we become much more unavailable for mutual aid, and mutual aid doesn't become mutual. So I would expect you will hear from all the other communities that we're not adequately staffing to cover our own town, and that they're supplementing that, which a lot of communities don't like, because then it's not mutual aid.
But I see it as a short-term thing. It's not a long-term. And I think
Right, the other issue is it's a safety issue for firefighters. 2 firefighters having to respond in an engine cannot effectively do anything arriving at a fire scene. They're restricted by the OSHA 2 in, 2 out. The best they could do is squirt water from the outside. Rescues are not likely a possibility at all, because there's nobody backing them up. There's not the other 2 out to rescue them. And then we would be waiting for additional mutual aid before we could do anything.
How many fire calls did you have during those hours where we just had 2 people on duty?
that required,
I would have to go
It was a
back
real
and look at
fire.
that. I
That would
don't,
be useful. What's the probability that we would have what you call a fire call? I'm not sure I know the full
it's not,
definition
no,
of
it's
it.
not a fire call. It's a call for a real fire.
well, any fire call limits our ability to do things, because now there's nobody outside providing safety. There's nobody that can be an incident commander, because if we have to go inside, now both people are there.
Well, first of all, you're there 40 hours a week.
Well, yes, if I'm not at the regional for a meeting, or at Essex County for a meeting, or something like that, I'm there.
Can you just run through like a carbon monoxide call? Because like you said, that counts as a fire call. right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
how does that work?
So what that would work is, we'd arrive on scene. The company officer would do a walk around 360. Then he and one of the other firefighters would go in fully suited up with the air pack, with a 4 gas meter, with 1 firefighter remaining outside to operate the pump and to provide safety. And then they would go through and try and find out if there's actually a carbon monoxide leak in the house and what it's caused from, and if we need to call National Grid and do whatever, and then they would come out. The challenge is, without that other person out there, and if it's a time I'm not working, a Saturday, a Sunday, it's 9 o'clock at night and I'm not here. Those 2 people go in and something goes wrong, nobody knows about it. Because there isn't an incident commander outside to monitor that, or someone that can go in and commit a rescue. That's the whole reason why the mutual aid district does not recognize a mutual aid piece with under 3 people, because the industry standard says you should have an officer and 2 firefighters minimum on any piece to function safely and to be able to maximize what you can do with that piece of apparatus. And that's why the 3rd person
Well, I,
is very important, especially on times when I'm not there, which is nice weekends and holidays.
So can
I've
you
had
answer the
my,
question? Yeah.
I've had my smoke alarms go off twice in the last 12 years.
Mhm,
2 people showed up. That's it.
mhm.
There weren't 3 people, there were 2. And they both came inside and there were no issues.
Right, well, that's the thing. We work worst case scenario backwards. So we try and make it as safe for the people we're protecting as well as the firefighters themselves. That's why there's these national standards and that's why there's these OSHA mandates. And I didn't create those, but that's why 2 people is unacceptable to go to any community around here on an engine. Essex, Ipswich, Gloucester, Beverly, Hamilton, Wenham, they don't want us sending only 2 people because that's not a functioning fire company. So if it's not a functioning fire company for anybody else, it really shouldn't be a functioning fire company for a standard here in town.
So the tension here is, if resources weren't a problem, we absolutely would want to do that. And no one would argue. Unfortunately, we live in a world of limited resources. So we have to make do with what we have. Starting Monday, you will have 3 people on. And perhaps that 3rd person, while not fully fire trained, can be part of a crew.
Well, they're part of a crew, but very limited. It is not the same thing.
I just said it's.
I know.
So.
I just don't want people, you folks and the public to not understand the difference in what 2 people make versus 3 people make versus 4 people make on the fire department with the level of service we can provide for the initial call and then any subsequent call.
Versus 5 versus 6 versus 8. You know, the maximum protection would be,
Right,
you know, 6 people on.
I just want to
24/7.
make sure that the people that are making the decisions and choosing how to spend the money and how directing me to staff or not staff, what the national standards are, what's done locally in all the other communities, and why that's important.
So with all that said,
So
look at the
be
probability.
careful about what you say about all the other communities. Essex relies on 100% call.
Well,
The communities around are using call firefighters.
Hamilton relies on
Hamilton,
call.
Wenham, Essex.
Right.
So
Southport is 100% call.
you told us you couldn't have call firefighters, but I look at the spreadsheet and all the other towns use it.
Like I said before, the demographics work in the other town. The facts that I used for this town were that 5 call firefighters made 2% or less of all potential calls they could have in a year. That's out of about 650 calls. They showed up at like 12 or 14 calls.
And
That's,
to me, that's a management issue. When I look at this list and it says Middleton, Essex, Rockport, Ipswich, Topsfield,
Mhm.
Hamilton, Wenham, Linfield, all are partially call firefighters. I don't understand how all those towns can do it and we can't. I'm sorry.
the people there have decided to volunteer. That's the system they're used to. When you have an all volunteer department, like Rockport, if people choose not to show up, nobody shows up. It's different when you're relying on a full-time paid department, that the expectation is different.
But most of these towns have full-time firefighters.
They
Plus
do.
call.
They do, but most of the call department people there live in those towns and volunteer because they want to help their town. Because they've done it, they're long-term members and things like that. Here, we had 1 call firefighter that lived in town. One out of our last 5, actually 2 that lived in town.
So, I know we talked about this over the last couple of years,
Sure.
and we have increased the level of minimum training to the point where to be a call firefighter. I remember it was like something like 400 hours of training and other things like that, so we've effectively removed that option from people who want to do it as a volunteer. And maybe these other communities haven't done that, and we should revisit that. And have a blend of people and a blend of skills here. The other thing is that in talking with friends who were in other communities on finance committees,
Sure.
that apparently a lot of these fire regulations and things are recommendations, but not requirements. And I think it would be extremely helpful for Manchester to know what are actual requirements versus what are recommendations.
Sure.
Because the line you don't want to go over for various reasons is different than the would be nice line. And
No, I
our
agree.
job, and again, I just have to say, our job here is to look at this through the financial lens. And the financial numbers are not good.
Right,
You
so
know, so-
I have laid that out before. NFPA 1710 says that within the first 8 minutes, you need 14 to 16 firefighters on scene. They don't have to belong to your own community. That can be used. You can use mutual aid to achieve that. The one that's not the wiggle room one is the OSHA mandate 2 in, 2 out that deals specifically with breathing apparatus in an environment that's inherently dangerous to life and health, called an IDLH environment. That OSHA mandate, and given that Massachusetts is an OSHA state, says that if you're going to send 2 firefighters in, you have to have 2 available firefighters outside at that time in order to be able to rescue them if something happens. The only time they are able to go outside of that is if a successful rescue is likely, and that they'd be able to forego the 2 in, 2 out to get in quickly to rescue somebody and come out. Otherwise, they would remain on scene outside the building until an additional 2 people showed up, whether from their own department or a mutual aid department, to satisfy the 2 in, 2 out, and would be able to go in.
So it's room for judgment calls.
I mean,
Yes.
so this time when Sarah said, she said twice in the past 12 years, right, you had a CO issue, so 2 firefighters came, right, they went in that, right?
They were in the
So
house.
are you saying that violated OSHA or something?
No, because that wasn't, because with the meter, that hadn't already been determined to be an immediate danger to life and health. If you roll up on a structure fire and you see flames and smoke's billowing out, you identify that immediately as inherently dangerous to life and health.
Okay, so there's a clear distinction, which makes sense rationally between a fire and a carbon monoxide call.
Yeah, now-
Even though they're both fire calls.
Right.
They're different.
Now, I will tell you that if it's a carbon monoxide detector activation and you're reporting unconscious people in the building or somebody feeling sick and a headache and nauseous, that flips it because now there's confirmation that is likely carbon monoxide. So now those firefighters to go in there are going to be required to be on breathing apparatus. And inherently that would put the OSHA regulation into effect unless they could get in quickly and pull somebody out.
So what's the, I'll clarify the notion of, for mutual aid, you have to be able to send 3, but then that necessarily is the limit for 2 in, 2 out. Is the expectation on a mutual aid is that there's already somebody from another company that's already there?
Yes, that's,
Why wouldn't it then also be possible that just 2 people could go if there's already an incident commander that could?
because you don't know what the other department has or what they're doing, and the whole goal is not just to meet the 2 in, 2 out, that's a minimum for entering the building. It's the NFPA 1710, that you have enough duties and responsibilities that you need to do on the scene to effectively fight a fire, that you need a minimum of 14 people on scene. Because you have to establish a water supply, you have to have 2 firefighters on a hose line, you have to have firefighters doing ventilation, you have to have 2 firefighters doing search and rescue. You have to have 2 firefighters throwing ladders. So there's a whole bunch of job requirements that we have to complete at a fire that takes a minimum of 14 people to do it effectively. That doesn't mean it can't be done with less. It can, but you're risking not being able to rescue people and potentially not being able to save the structure because you can't get to where the fire is because you're required to stay outside.
But to build on Andy's point, let's say Beverly calls for mutual aid, right?
Mhm.
And let's say it's a doozy of a fire.
Yeah.
And so Beverly's got, whatever, 2, 3 trucks and let's say 12 firefighters with that, right?
Yeah.
And we want to send 1 engine with 2 guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not gonna refuse that because it's not free, are they?
Yes,
Even though there's already 12 firefighters there.
right, because they want a functioning company. So when that company gets there, they say, your company is going to do X, Y, Z. It's not an add up how many people we have, because companies are assigned as they come in. So the first in engine, those 3 guys are assigned to attack the fire. The next 3 guys are gonna assign to vent the building. The next 3 are gonna do search and rescue.
In my scenario, they literally would tell you to turn the truck
I think
around.
we've heard enough.
I've spoken to the area chiefs, and because of the Essex County Pact, they said they would rather we not come than only send 2, because it doesn't give them the manpower structure they need to effectively fight the fire.
That's a rather not common. I mean, I think we've talked about this enough.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is it clear that we've had a high incidence of situations we haven't been able to respond to because we only have 2?
Well, I know there's at least one mutual aid call last week we weren't able to respond to.
And within the town.
I'm not worried.
Oh,
about
no, I mean, we'll respond anywhere within the town with 2. But what I'm saying is, it's from an experiential and an industry standard point.
Okay.
And that's why since I arrived here, the minimum standard we have had been 3
Yes.
up until this point, because
Self-imposed.
that's what we need. Yes,
Self-imposed. standard.
yes, there's no minimum manning clause or anything like that. That was because that's the industry standard minimum for safety.
Yes, I understand.
Have we needed mutual aid in this town recently, or
You'll listen to
maybe-
street- you'll listen to Street Fighter.
fire was the last?
Yeah, we had Essex Street, when else did we have mutual aid in here? We had them on a couple calls because they were reported structure fires. We had one that reported structure fire at Coolidge Point. We had, so the mutual aid was already started. They didn't end up needing to go to work.
And we are able to provide some mutual aid to other towns.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not like there's a big imbalance.
No, I mean, we do more, we do more mutual aid with our ambulance.
Yeah, well, that's not a fire though.
No. No, we have done,
I mean, the concept of mutual aid is like, you scratch my back, I scratch
Yeah.
yours, right? I get it, right? You don't want it to be a one-way street. But there has to be a rational understanding that there's a difference between, say, Beverly and Gloucester and us, right? I mean, they're much bigger cities, much bigger departments, right? So, you know, if it edges a little bit,
Right.
60-40 from them to us, like,
yeah, no, that's not an
it's
issue.
not unreasonable given our.
No,
size,
that's not
right?
unreasonable.
Everything.
What I'm saying is if you start creating a much lower standard and we go 2 all the time. And we're drawing on them more often for second due calls, because when we drop to 2, just about any real fire call we have to call mutual aid.
I think we're talking about 2 for a limited period of time until you can get your people trained.
On half of
You're
the shifts,
on.
on half the shifts, the other shifts are fully staffed.
Well, yes, but if somebody's out and we don't replace it, then we're dropping to 2.
Right,
So that's because right now, from October 15th to December 31st. There are 23 24-hour shifts open. Meaning somebody on each one of those shifts has taken the day off. So normally we would try to say, who wants a 24, who wants a 10, who wants a 14, to try and fill some of these. Some of these are gonna be Thanksgiving, the day before, the day after, Christmas, New Year's Eve. Those are harder days to get people. So that's what we're looking at from here. That at least 23 shifts during that period of time, if we're not even attempting to offer the overtime to somebody, that we would be dropping to 2. And that's a significant number of shifts over a very short period of time.
That's why I wanted to look at what the historic probabilities are here. I think they're very low. You've been able to respond to 2 to a number of situations. It's just the fact that you can't do mutual aid, I think.
Well, we can't do mutual aid and we can't fully function on scene for a lot of calls other than
But how
a
many
medical aid.
How many fire involved calls, other than detectors, are you likely to have during that period? What's the experience rate?
Well, I would have to go back because it could be,
Yes.
it could be something as simple as a brush fire. It could be simple as a car fire that requires more than 2. So I would have to go back. I can go back. and
If
get
you did, you give us a sense of probability, one thing.
I think you mentioned a good point too, which there's mutual aid to fires in nearby towns, so there's mutual aid on medical.
Mhm,
And it sounds like we are able to easier do mutual aid on medical
yes,
than fire. well, to me, that's kind of a beautiful situation, right? Because then we're
Because
able.
these 3 new hires can do the ambulance
Well, I was
stuff.
gonna say, you know, we could provide
can-
more mutual aid on the medical, and if in return, we might need more mutual aid on fire, well,
Right.
they offset, right? I mean, it's just, you just don't want it to be a true one-way street.
No.
Like, we're always getting mutual aid from Boston,
And
we're
if
always
these,
getting.
these 3 new people are paramedics, and they can come here.
That goes on, I call.
But, oh, you call the question, okay,
The lovely lady on the wall.
There you go.
okay. So we're okay on this?
Yeah, no, I, that's.
So. Bottom line. Do you feel like we should spend the overtime to go back to 3? Or are you okay with 2? That's the fundamental question.
Yeah, that is.
You want a motion?
No.
Okay, you do.
The sense of the board is that
Sense of the board?
Yes. Two.
Does everyone agree to 2?
Two.
Now, contradicting.
Okay. We're good with that. Okay. Next item is updates from the town administrator. On Grand Central Street Culvert, ARPA funds, cell signaling, facilities and properties master plan.
So start with the Central Street culvert project. We still have not heard from FEMA.
There was,
Grant.
there was an ad in the paper.
Yes, it's very close.
Okay,
Very close.
that's before they
that's
issued the
final-
grant.
That's the
Oh,
final
okay,
box that they have to check off is historic preservation, and archaeology. We continue to be told that we are strongly in the running. In the meantime, we have submitted to with the 3rd other grant in the works, in case the brick grant does not come through. So I think fairly optimistic that one way or the other, we will receive the bulk of the funding for that project. Cost of that project keeps escalating. Probably close to an $8 million project.
8 million?
$8 million.
And how much will we get roughly in the grant?
I'm hoping for 7
Okay.
altogether.
That's a good.
Combination.
And what was the probable cost a year ago?
Well, the original estimate was just under 5 point something.
I don't know, I thought it was about 20.
Yeah, it's just under 6.
So when's the quick we can break ground things
Well, we quit the full breakdown is a year from,
year from now, October? So
year from September. That's the soonest it could be. We may not make next fall.
Is there an anticipated duration
I'm sorry.
for the project schedule?
Start to finish it probably.
So the risk is the cost in the next 12 months. And if it does, is that 7 million grand increase with it or no? That's fair.
Understood.
Will it, like maybe, or?
We could always apply for something. So. With any luck, we get the green light by the end of this year, and then the project can go forward next fall. It's more restricted from when the project can go forward, it has to avoid a smooth runs, falling season.
So what is that? Is that the summer? or?
It's spring, early summer.
So if we're targeting, I'll pick you September, then kind of a nod that.
Right, so from September to,
Oh, I see,
March.
on the backside.
Yeah. we could go all over.
Would this be like what's going on in Essex with a bypass, or would it be?
No.
So this has all these financial implications to the town and merchants and
Yes.
everybody. Pleasant Street.
It'll be a major discussion.
Yeah.
We're pretty sure if we get some cooperation from some landowners that we can think of pedestrian passage. But it's unlikely we will be able to maintain. It will go much quicker if we detour traffic.
Maybe we need a ferry.
Right.
This will sound like I'm wearing rose colored glasses, but whatever, but glass half full. I mean, the way School Street looks right now, to me, that's like a proxy for that. In other words, you know where I live, I just stay as far away, right? Pine, Pleasant Highway, I just,
Right,
right?
I
I
agree.
normally would do school, but I don't.
Right, I agree. I don't either.
So I'm saying, maybe,
I live on school and I stay away.
there you go.
But this
So
is
there's no-
different, this is different.
This will be,
A little bit, I'm just saying, like, right now, for me,
This
you know,
is,
to go to the schools and the dump and all that, I used to go. Like, school central and then take left from school, and now, like, I just take a left on Pine and.
but it's more the walk, it's the pedestrian thing that I think is really important.
Well, and the businesses that are right there.
well, it'll be people coming from Beverly and Beverly Farms going to Gloucester will come up Pine, Pleasant, School, back through town. So there's the three legs of the heater are gonna see a lot, a lot of wear and tear. Put some speed bumps in.
Have we thought about response times for the fire and ambulance? You know, through Pleasant Street, they're acceptable.
No, I'm seriously considering needing to potentially staff people on the opposite side of the culvert for certain periods of time.
Is the Gloucester Magnolia Station, is that 24/7 or is that?
Yep.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's that project.
Okay,
Facility planning, master planning.
Yeah.
We have a firm on board and they're just getting organized to get underway.
so what type of timeline are you talking of? Is there a contract that says how long it's gonna take?
Yeah, that we call them that. I'm guessing when they take a formal project.
Okay,
Who's the vendor?
Um,
Do I have a PO already for it?
I don't think you. I think the same.
facilities and town properties master plan.
Yeah, that's the firm. So that'll be getting underway soon.
So we're just looking at all the buildings and structures and trying to ascertain where things are maintenance wise, future planning, that type of thing.
If you need a new building, we'll make it all. So,
So it's future planning and assessment of our current.
And also how to use the various properties.
yes.
And it covers all properties in the town, all town properties. All town buildings,
All time
all
buildings,
town buildings, that's what I mean by.
yes. It'll look at some of the vacant.
It looks at the functional groups themselves.
Right.
How we're operating, how things operate.
That's exactly.
As the Pine Street complex.
So it's the schedule is open. We still have not received a permit from DEP. We're told that there aren't issues, it's just a matter of getting it through the bureaucracy. And so we're expecting that any day. We've told that for a while now.
There's usually like a hearing date.
I'm sorry.
There's usually a hearing that is part of that process.
Yeah, they've gone through all of that.
They have, okay.
Yeah,
All right, so
it's
it's just-
waiting for that final report.
You got. Picking us, when do you think they'll break ground?
Yeah, I'm hoping they're breaking ground in November.
And then how long? Roughly?
So it'll take them until middle of summer. To be operational.
And then we can start screening.
And then what?
We start screening part after we get this up and on, right?
So we're talking about the compost. This is-
The compost.
Uh,
Okay,
uh,
I'm sorry, I was thinking of.
And then we wanted to take our compost up School Street.
Correct. We'll be switching over.
So when you say whatever it is, 7 months, the ballpark from when they break it, that's to them, for them to build everything, quote unquote, that they're gonna have there?
Yes, it's again, so no supply chain issue.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's not
no,
It's like a, I mean, you're the engineer, it's like a big Quonset hut kind of, is that how to?
it's a pretty simple construction.
It's not a fancy structure, right? It's
No,
functional.
So wouldn't it just have a cover more
an enclosed space,
for smell?
trap the air,
Method, filter.
filter, run it through a carbon.
Because you know, you go down, School Street. It's not that.
Oh my God, we're just all at the back, yeah, it's nice.
It's not great.
Well, it's legals.
Oh my
Are
God.
they bringing material in from other communities?
They
at this point?
do,
Yeah,
And that is anticipated to increase with this new.
yes, they have to make sure they always have capacity for our.
How far will that be from Gravelly Pond? As the crow flies?
It's, how far is that?
Not far, right?
Not far, no, it's not far, but it drains the other way. It does not drain towards God,
Oh, really?
so the road is a divide.
Yeah.
Got it. So
The
the
land-
road, so we're gonna,
It's the
we're gonna go on the right side of Gravelly Pond. And
Right,
the road is kind of a berm.
well, yes, some of the high points,
Yeah.
so that all that landfill water drains into Sawmill Brook. Eventually,
I mean, obviously, I gotta believe it's gonna be tested and
Yes.
monitored and.
Right.
Right. and
so, the landfill itself. That water is not good. That's contaminated water.
Which, sorry, which, like, you're talking about
Our old
The
landfill,
cap. That's why it's capped.
Where the dump is, transfer station.
the transfer station.
Yeah, that's. Pine Street.
When I think cap, I think Pine Street. Oh, there's another cap.
There's some old-
A real cap.
that's real.
Pine Street, not a real cap.
Will there be, will there be verbiage that they're responsible if there's any damage to that cap? Because they're gonna drive a lot. of
Yes,
heavy
yeah.
machines, Yeah.
They're required to increase the depth of material on top of the cap.
Well, or to remediate anything if the water quality gets worse.
Right.
I'm sure.
So the issue is not Gravelly Pond, it's more Sawmill Brook.
Yeah.
And it's already an existing problem because of this prior caps.
Yeah, if I were to guess the source of the PFAS and looking well, it's coming from the landfill.
But now this potential.
I can't prove that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the landfill is the one that's at the current transfer station.
Right.
And when that was capped, is it behaving differently than the original anticipation? I mean, are they finding things that they didn't anticipate and it's worse? Or is this normal behavior for a capped?
It's normal
Facility.
behavior, I think the concern, certainly with the PFAS is a new concern.
Yeah.
Most PFAS levels at that landfill.
But the PFAS is coming from everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, it's coming from
Everywhere.
home sewer systems and foam from
If you
fire
ever
trucks.
close
I
your
mean,
window.
it's all over the place. Yeah, so.
It's everywhere.
Right.
So it's really hard to do.
If I had to look at this glass half full or half empty, I mean, adding this new green earth thing up there, like, is it gonna make it better or worse? Like, better in the sense it's gonna be more testing, because, right, they're having this new facility, or worse, just because now you're adding more compost on top of an already capped landfill, like,
It's not making it worse.
it's not making it worse.
And if they do test their compost, and it has very low, very low numbers.
That's, you know, I mean, that's part of the whole filing, it's,
I'm just saying, potentially, could I look at a glass half full in the sense that now there's gonna be more testing, like, right?
Yeah, but look,
Because. Green earth is blacker.
Blacker. Okay, let's move on.
One question though, so with Black Earth moving off of School Street, is there still a plan to think about DPW up there?
so
Is
that's
that-
part of that facility study,
And
yeah.
that's the facility stuff.
How big is that lot? Well, 5 acres.
Could be It could be off an acre or two.
And-
So,
I gotta believe there's huge limitations, right, in terms of what you can develop there, given.
Well, I think that's the purpose of getting this facility to study master plan, so that they can look at a spot like that.
Mm.
And
We did a
say
very
what it could
cursory-
be used for.
We did a very cursory layout for DPW facility there, it fits and it works. But in terms of other uses, we haven't done much of that.
I would just be curious, a windmill. It's a nice height, yeah.
Okay,
What was that? What else?
ARPA fund.
So we haven't, we still have. I think it's 400, that hasn't been allocated. DPW could easily use all of that. And
Did you expect to have it by now? Funds, did you expect to have those funds by now?
you got a second?
We've got the third.
Yeah,
So there's 4 payments in total. We
I see.
received 3 out of the 4.
yeah.
Got it, okay.
So it seems to me like we should take ARPA funds into consideration when we're doing the capital budget for 2024. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
I mean, we were talking about, my recollection was like almost 2/3 to 3/4 of those ARPA funds going toward capital.
Yes.
You know, and I think it was mostly pipes and I
Correct.
and that type of thing.
Correct.
So,
but it seems to me like if we're using the ARPA funds, then that should cut back some on what we have to spend on the capital budget. That we should be substituting those
Right.
for things we'd otherwise spend. Instead of having it just be a bounty. Because we're getting tight.
I think our debt exclusions are gonna go down too, because interest rates are up, and it's about the interest payments that we retire, right?
It's
So
only down to 32. 32.
I mean, those payments won't change, we're locked in.
We're locked in, so,
Yeah.
okay. It'll be the same.
but to your point, Sarah, I think we figured out just 4 or 5 years ago that the town has a certain capacity for capital upheaval. And when you exceed that, you get calls. Don't worry about calls, but you get a lot of calls. And maybe if that's the cap, use ARPA to get up there, but it doesn't mean just go crazy.
Right.
To your point, we can backfill that need.
The number I know in my brain is 400 grand, Greg, right? That's the road amount, right? If you spend more than that, you drive people in town nuts because you're shutting down too many roads, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't know if I would put it exactly that number, but I get your point.
but roughly, right? Like, that's why we picked the 3 million, and the 3 million is baked in 400 grand for roads, and I don't know all the other numbers that add up to the 3 million, but it was determined to be. a
One
good-
year we pushed to like 4.8, and it was a tough year for Greg. for his counterpart.
It's a- the 3 to 3.5 million is a good number for this.
Right. So that just ties in with what you're saying. You don't want to take the ARPA and add it on top because now you get more calls.
Well, but when we
Good
spend
problem.
3 and 3.5, are we doing it fast enough so that things don't fail on us?
Yeah,
I mean,
Yes.
that's a responsible response.
yeah, obviously, there are some bigger projects.
Yep.
But I don't, annual basis, in terms of repairing and replacing and worn out, that's a good number for us.
And just put like at a 30,000 foot, 20-second synopsis, like on pipes, I mean, we're doing good, right? We're going the right way, we're fixing more than there are bad.
We're definitely making headway, we're catching up,
Making headway, that's.
The frequency of pipe breaks
it's bad,
is less.
yeah, absolutely. I remember those early years when I was here, it was every month.
Right, right.
Same for them.
Yes, yeah, so it definitely has a.
Back to sewage treatment, back up to more capacity, because we're reduced salt water intake is a huge check mark. in the direction.
Yes, yeah, that would be the consent of one. Good project, yes.
Yeah, right.
Sticking with pipes, like, how many years out will that pipes dollar number do this?
Let's
In a
wait and
sense-
talk about this when we do the 2024 budget.
Okay.
We're running really late tonight. We still have a lot to cover and we're gonna go through this again when we do the 2024 budget, right?
You-
That's why I asked the question. That's why I asked, are we doing this fast enough? I mean, are we doing, are we spending at a
So,
way?
so Chuck will go into detail for you.
Okay.
There's a couple of bigger projects that are
We'll talk about
expensive
it
that
later.
would greatly improve the system. In terms of water use, out as we head east. That's our problem.
But there's probably many towns that would love to be able to say the number you just said and can't. Right?
Cell signaling. Where do we
So-
stand on that? And I've heard something about tax incentives or something. Can you
So
explain
we
that
had
to
a
us?
very preliminary conversation about the potential of tax increment financing arrangement. So South Signaling needs water and sewer to the site. They can pay for the improvements and do it quicker than we can. So in exchange, you could consider them doing that and we giving them a break on the new values. So instead of, for example, they build $100 million facility and we, in year one, tax it at 75% of value. And then over 5 years, we get to 100% value in exchange for them doing $5 million worth of utility work.
I was just about to ask, is that 5 million, is that?
I'm just making up, but yeah, it's actually, that's a ballpark.
Is that actually a good ball? Okay.
But we're not required to do those water and sewer upgrades for new development.
No.
So that's part of their cost.
Why would we do the increment of,
Right.
if in fact, if they're on?
Yes.
It's a carrot toward, helping the LCD develop the
Okay.
business we want it to go to. But is it a carrot we need to be
Right,
extending?
Right.
I mean, yeah,
So.
I don't think we want to be too greedy. I mean, I think, as long as the numbers work, right, it's just math.
Yeah, I mean, you're still gaining significant. I mean, you're still
Right,
getting
exactly.
75% of the 100 million that you didn't have.
I mean, is that the number you just grabbed, or is that actually?
Oh, it'll be higher.
Talking about
It'll
a
be higher.
15,000 square foot facility at $1,000 a foot. I mean, $1,000 is what people are spending. Mark, correct us, but basically what people are spending in Central Square for lab space. It was really less here, but
Is that 150 million?
Yeah, yeah.
it's
So now I want the last piece of the puzzle, what's the commercial tax rate? It's the same as.
Same thing. Yeah, we don't. we're the same.
a little 11.
Oh, 11.
Oh,
It's like 150 million divided by 1,000 times. You know,
That's a good
Yeah.
number.
We want to think about roads.
So I just, my personal opinion is, I'm certainly in favor of having negotiations, because to me, at the end of the day, this is gonna work out well for the town.
So, very early stages, we'll, not going to have so just two-step process. Voters have to authorize, concept of this, and then they have to, so they approve that first, and then you bring forward a specific negotiated proposal on a specific project, and voters have to approve that too.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay, so it has to be voter approval.
So this is for physically getting more water over 128 to that and sewer.
Back the other way. Yeah,
Okay, and so it's a permitting and then also a construction and probably a post-permitting effort, right? So it's a lot of legal and then
Yeah.
construction and a lot of
a
legal at the
lot of
end.
pieces. a lot of
Okay.
pieces.
A
So,
lot of years.
But the best way it makes sense to me is like what you said at the beginning, if they have a method to get it done quicker and faster, whatever that means financially or regular, then. Like, we should be willing to do something on our side to help facilitate that, because then that facilitates the construction being quicker and we get on tax rolls. and-
it's worth the conversation.
Yeah.
Worth the conversation.
So it's half as fast or presumably they're not going through a lot of municipal protocols, and they're doing it like an industrial project, which is sort of bring it in, get it done.
But it's not prevailing wage. Correct.
Now,
Yeah.
the type of electricity they need, I hear that they have to come from a substation in Beverly.
So electricity is, it turns out, is the biggest stuff. So National Grid, they can't provide the electricity today to that project. And they want an astronomical amount of money to upgrade it. And we're talking tens of millions of dollars.
To upgrade from where to where?
From Beverly to the south.
This is wires, basically. It's wires and all associated transformers.
Yeah. Now, there's a possibility of coming down from Essex. So we're in the middle of trying to figure that all out. Talking to legislators to see if some economic development help might go towards that. It surprised me. I was not aware of that limitation.
I mean, at that price,
I mean, we are the gateway to the rest of Cape Ann.
Mhm.
So it impacts all of Cape Ann.
Mm.
Look at all the
The major
building they've
trunk-
done in Gloucester.
The major trunk line is right here through this culvert, which is one of the reasons why it keeps going up and down. It's a major upgrade to deal with that trunk.
I think at some price, they look into just fully renewable, right? Like, I mean, if it's tens of millions, I don't know, geothermal, solar.
Yes, no, that's been, that's
All
been
things.
discussed.
I don't know.
So Applied Materials years ago put in a windmill because their peak power, not average power, but peak power load is crazy high. And there was some reason why they did that, that allowed them to get more power. And is that a possibility in this case?
It might be.
Or you can do the peak shaving.
Like just a little
things like that.
Yeah, they.
Just
fire up.
It's crazy.
Just make sure the blades, just make sure the blades don't fall off. That's all, right?
I shouldn't believe it's high.
Okay, should we move on to the
Right.
potential November warrant articles?
Yes, please.
So two money articles. That are in town. And one is a supplemental appropriation for professional legal services. To pay for the appeal that the 40B. Anyways, the 40B expense, the defense of the 40B denial. So we spent roughly 30,000. With the ZBA process, most of that coming out of this year's budget. And then, you know, we're looking at 100,000 or so to defend. the decision.
That's a hearing process. I thought that was just like independent review by the state. And
Yeah.
then they
De novo, de novo.
Right.
Yeah.
It's de novo. They start all over, they don't look at anything that the ZBA did.
Yeah.
They
So you have to
start-
present your
experts
experts.
to present your case.
Yeah.
I see.
You
They
have
have
to
to do a
hire,
site visit.
yeah, starting all over. So we have to hire experts to testify.
It's intentionally that way.
Yes.
So this is a silly question, but obviously you want to budget low, but do you anticipate an overrun even on that?
I feel pretty comfortable with that figure. No guarantee, but
Non-binding referendum, or is it just something to, I mean, why do we have to put this to a vote?
Oh, it's an additional appropriation. Town has to go.
it's new.
But in terms of where the actual cash is coming from. It's not,
Free cash.
I take it from the.
just check, I just wanna make sure we weren't like adding there's supplemental taxing. of people.
No, I would.
When we're sitting on 14% free cash.
That's fine.
To me, this is, yeah, left pocket, right pocket.
So that's one. And the other is to tap into the existing fire apparatus fund. And take 430,000 for the purchase of a new ambulance.
I think the select board recommended 450.
How much
Yeah,
is
they
it?
did that.
How much is in the bond?
965,000.
This is the backup.
No,
This would become the frontline ambulance.
Did we just buy an ambulance?
For 2019.
And the reason you're doing this is because it takes so long to get one.
The new wait now is 24 months plus for a new ambulance from order to delivery. And there are still people waiting on chassis and cabs to start building the ambulances. It's the same for fire apparatus, and the prices are going up incrementally. Had we ordered this before October 1st, we would have saved 20%, went up 20% October 1st.
so if you trade in the current ambulance,
We wouldn't be trading it.
why?
That would go into reserve so that we would have a spare. But if ambulance one got
We ne-
destroyed in a car accident, if it's out for repairs, we have the ability. And with staffing, we could run second due ambulance calls
We-
when the first.
We
ambulance
would
was
want to
tied up.
know what the trade-in value is of ambulance number one, because we never approved a second ambulance.
Okay, I will have to get that
So
number.
we would just want to know
Yeah.
that
The
information.
challenge is, as I explained to other people in the past. If something were to happen to our primary ambulance in this current market of supply chain issues, we would be without an ambulance for 2 years. So that's approximately a $600,000 loss in EMS billing revenue. As well as we could no longer rely on mutual aid to cover us because we weren't providing the basic service ourselves. So we could potentially looking into needing to get into a contract with a private ambulance company, which would cost more money in order to do our EMS while we waited for the arrival of a second ambulance.
How long has ambulance number two been out of service?
A year and a half.
So why wasn't this raised when we did the 2023 budget?
Because we're still trying to find a way to see if ambulance two was going to be a viable replacement. We put repairs in, we're still talking around to people to see if it could be made viable. And it could not, nobody wanted to touch it. Because the motor that's in it is a 6.0 Ford, and they're historically bad, they're historically difficult to work on. They have historic failures, and that's why they're no longer used. Ford no longer makes those, that's why that ambulance isn't made anymore. And anybody that has them is getting rid of them.
So why are we still trying to fix it? We got such an absolute opinion about its unfixability.
Oh, we're not now, you guys, the board voted to surplus it, we're
Okay, but I
not.
thought you said you're still spending money.
No, that was prior to the last
Okay, okay.
budget, we're still trying to find the viability.
But to Peter's point, how much money and time did we spend trying to fix ambulance two?
Probably like 10 grand,
And over what period of time?
2 years.
What is its value, do you think? now?
$3,500, we put it out to bid, we did not get any bids on it. We do have a private buyer that is interested in purchasing it. But if not, we can use it as $3,500 worth of trade-in to Greenwood Fire Apparatus. In return.
I was gonna say, is it just the engine you're putting in? A different kind of engine, I don't mean a new Ford 6.0, I mean, you know.
Yeah, I would have to look into that, but the ambulance has a lot of road miles on it, and that's the problem. The problem was it ran first due for too long. So by the time it went into reserve, it became less and less reliable and viable. That's why the thought that I tried to institute 2 years ago of replacing the ambulances every 5 years is when the new ambulance comes into service, the old ambulance goes into reserve for a couple of years and gets rotated in so it stays viable, and you don't run it into the ground as a first due. Then you get rid of that and the cycle repeats. So a 5-year cycle for frontline ambulances, where that's our primary vehicle, and it's the only vehicle we run that actually makes the town any money. It's important to have one and to have a spare. There's an article in the newspaper. It was the Wilmington newspaper. It says, 3 weeks after a town ambulance was crashed into, a driver crashed into a town fire engine. So both of these accidents happened on Route 93. It said here, while we may be down 2 vehicles, rest assured that with our reserve apparatus, we will be able to, and assistance from, received from mutual aid, we will be able to not experience any reduction in service. Anecdotally, I talked to the Essex County Chiefs this morning, and even in the study that I gave out of the area departments, pretty much any fire department that runs 1 ambulance has 2 ambulances, for precisely those reasons I stated. 1, to be in service when the ambulance needs to go out to repairs. 2, to be available if something tragic happens to your frontline ambulance. And 3, to available for callback, or if increased staffing, be able to do second due calls, which could bring in somewhere between $20,000 to $50,000 additional in ambulance revenue. That with only 1 ambulance, you have to give that to a private ambulance or mutual aid ambulances.
What your model is ambulance to?
It's a 2010.
Because you mentioned it had a lot of miles of wear and tear.
Yeah, the 2010, and it was just replaced in 2020. So that's a long time. It ran 10 or 12 years. It ran about 10 years as a frontline ambulance.
I don't know, I mean, to me, for a lot of reasons, it seems worth investigating and swapping an engine, a better engine. If only because you gotta wait 2 years to get a brand new one anyways. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know how viable that is. I've not talked to anybody that has done that. The box and is not, the features on that are not comparable. They're old school features compared to what we have on ambulance 1. Ambulance 1's a 4-wheel drive. That one is not a 4-wheel drive.
I understand, but you're saying, even if we ordered the new one today, it's gonna take 2 years, right?
Yes,
And you're saying it's always good to have a backup.
yes.
So we haven't had one for a year and a half.
Yes,
So I'm just saying, if there's a short-term, short dollar fix whereby putting a new engine in, and I don't know, making this up 5-8 grand, whatever, right, it's a new engine. I mean, it just seems like that might be something good to investigate just as a stopgap.
I mean, if we can forestall spending $430,000 for another 2 or 3 or 4 years, that's a huge benefit. I do want to just correct something, I think, is that there's a comment about $600,000 in revenue. The ambulance, as I understand it, from doing this budget stuff for years, is not a revenue generator. That's a cost offsetter. So that's reducing costs, but it's not bringing revenue. You know, this isn't a break-even operation. This is a this is a
I'm not.
lost expense operation, and this is diminishing the expense. So I just want to be careful of our terminology here. When we say 600,000 in lost revenue, what we're really talking about here is offsetting a big expense amount.
Well, the way I'm looking at it too, it's lost revenue because that's not coming to our town. We're giving that to whoever's ambulance comes to transport our patients. So money that would normally go to us is going to somebody else. That's the framework of lost revenue. I'm not saying it's a break even or anything like that.
And that 600 is pretty high based on last year too, because 600 assumes 300 grand a year.
Well, I just had the latest numbers from Comstar year to date, I thought was, what did they show here?
I think it was 220, I think it's for fiscal 22. Much closer to 200 than 300.
I do like the strategy of really kind of investigating what kind of investment. To get that second line.
Because part of what's happening with,
Yeah, that's much closer to 200.
part of what's happening with the vehicle costs, we're seeing the same thing in the construction industry, you know, costs are peaking. Lead times are a year plus for stuff that would traditionally be, 24, 30 weeks. And the expectation is that it's not, the costs aren't necessarily, and the lead times aren't gonna be staying there. There's gonna be a backside to this. And, especially for something that might have such a long lead time, if there's another way around, and especially, I mean, to your point, given, that 2-year gap, with the you know, for the rationale that you actually discussed, Chief, you know, just having another plan in place for that period of time alone is probably.
Yeah, better to have something than nothing, right? Even if it's not.
But the other way I was looking at it too, as part of the master plan, it would be to replace the ambulance in 2025. Was in the master plan that, in my apparatus replacement plan. But that's when it was a 6-month wait, so you can wait till halfway through 2024 and have your new ambulance in 2025.
And who knows, you know, who knows for how much longer this, you know,
According to the industry, it's not going anywhere because there are companies that are actually going back to municipalities that have signed contracts and asking them for more money to complete their fire trucks.
Yeah, no, I know, and, you know,
So-
companies aren't ordering, you know, honoring the costs of contracts. But again, just with the notion that this is not going on forever, you know, there is a backside to this.
Yeah.
It might be worth finding out a strategy to wait for
Andy, I thought you were making another point, which is it's worth trying to resuscitate the existing
that, right, for that reason.
for that reason.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that makes great sense for relatively short money.
Although I will say, if you're going to incur increased repair costs because of the age and wear and tear on it to begin with, that's what happens when you keep trying, like we're running into that with our ladder truck as well, that was supposed to be replaced last year. That I have to get to 2025 will not pass emissions now.
Yeah.
So there's a question, can it be fixed? Because it won't pass inspection, or is it no longer of any use to us because it can't legally drive on the road?
No, I get you, I
And-
get you. It's-
I get that an older vehicle is gonna require higher maintenance costs, that makes
Sure.
sense, but just, you know, spitballing. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, we dropped in a new engine, a GM engine, whatever.
Yeah.
And ambulance 2 is now up and running. You're still gonna lean more heavily on ambulance 1, right?
Correct.
So the share of time is gonna be 80-20 on ambulance 1.
I would have to see what would be a good rotation based on how reliable we can make ambulance do.
So I guess my point is, given that, you're not gonna be using ambulance 2 as much as ambulance 1 anyways, and therefore you're not beating it every day, so the maintenance on it shouldn't be as much, right? I mean,
Yeah, even if it's higher, you know, it's whatever, 10 grand a year, you know, whatever the number is.
As long as the vehicle maintenance budget will reflect that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you know, you could spend 20, 30, 40, $50,000 and still come out ahead by foregoing a $430,000 expense for another year or two.
Well,
These
right.
numbers are so different.
Yeah.
You know, waiting. As long as. it
Well,
doesn't
I
die on the road.
understand that. I guess the question would be is if you folks don't accept my vision of how to do apparatus replacement based on my training and experience, what is your goal with respect to when we should?
I don't think we're saying that to you. I think we're just saying, find out what it takes to rehabilitate number
I
2.
will do that.
Just let's do that. I think we're not saying much more. At least that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Is that we like, because we think, as just got pointed out, it's probably a number which is substantially less than buying a new one. Now, the replacement of the existing is a different issue. But bringing number 2 back online would be taking some pressure off of number 1, I believe. There'd be some kind of shared rotation.
Yes, they would.
So I think the task we're asking of you is let's find out if number 2 can be rehabilitated to a serviceable level. And what would that cost?
Mhm.
Just for the purpose of flexibility
Sure.
and buying time, perhaps, yeah.
Okay.
Are we putting away enough money for the ladder?
No. We need, engine 1 is 12 years old. And is a perfect time for it to be in reserve, that we should be getting a new frontline engine so that we have a spare engine. I've gotten an offer on the squad to sell it because it is not a solid replacement for engine 1. If engine 1 goes down. Especially if we lose the ability to use the ladder because of this emissions issue, whether or not we can get past it and make it legal and viable. A new engine runs in the neighborhood of $675,000 to $700,000. A new ladder truck is in the neighborhood of $1.2 million. And these are 28-month builds also.
So
So,
what should we put it? Do you have a new number for us as we,
well,
this may be
I,
next year?
Yes,
Yeah,
let's
that
wait
would be
until
for
the
next meeting.
2024.
Okay.
that's just forecasting, okay, we'll get it with the next one.
But everything you just said to me makes it even more compelling to.
Rehabilitate number two.
Right?
Maybe rehabilitating a ladder too, I mean, you go on out. Anyway, let's go on.
Okay. Fiscal year 2024 budget meeting schedule and department liaisons. Um, So you'll be presenting the budget to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee in December. Do you have any sense of when?
Either the fifth or the 14th.
Are we gonna do a joint meeting like we did last year?
Oh, yeah,
Wed-
yeah.
Wednesday, the 14th of December.
Fifth or the 14th?
14th, yes,
That is,
second Wednesday in December.
is that the second? Okay, yep. Okay. And then in January, we'll start our weekly meetings. We're gonna have compressed time this year. I'm assuming town meeting will be held at the normal time. And so we're not gonna have the extra couple of months that we've had in the last 2 years. And so my question is when we're talking about weekly meetings starting in January, what day of the week do we want them on? Thursdays?
I was gonna say that.
Are people good with Thursdays?
Very good, not
If
perfect.
we can get the information enough, like, I prefer Tuesday because you have your agenda Friday and you can look over the weekend at what's going on, but that's kind of,
Oh, I can get the agendas done.
and the information, because that hurts when you get like a bunch of information the night before the meeting.
Yeah, so you want the information for the weekend.
That would be nice.
Okay,
Me, Tuesday's a lot better for me than Thursday, but that's one of.
I'm happy as long as they're not when.
okay. I'm happy as long as you're not Wednesdays and play a ZBA on Wednesday, which just kind of screws up the schedule. FinCom originally met on Thursdays. When I joined. Okay,
Then Tuesday, the select.
yeah,
So I should take away that you're gonna be doing it on Thursdays?
yes. Weekly on Thursdays.
We have a monthly problem,
I'm sorry?
once a month you have a problem.
I do, yes, yeah, the fourth Thursday is
Yeah.
another obligation.
And then in December, we'll set up. When we get, we'll set up the schedule,
DPW, fire.
Yeah.
police, all those.
so people will know what's coming for each meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, at some points in the past, we've had department liaisons. For the big departments. And I don't know if anybody wants to do that this year or not.
What do you expect a liaison to do?
I would expect that they would work with the department head on the department asks and work through them and try to figure out where there could be changes. Say it.
Prior years, it's been maybe sort of sitting in on a meeting that they would have Greg separately.
Those have already been
Probably
held.
with Andrew and me for the initial request.
Yeah.
A few times we've had you sit in on those.
Yeah.
Those already occurred.
No,
Oh, okay,
no, those will occur in November,
okay,
early November, the first couple of weeks of November.
And then, as needed, if there's more time that needs to be spent.
okay. So people can let me know which departments, what department they'd like to do if they want to do it.
I just have one idea on this.
Yes.
Because I got assigned the town hall one before.
Yeah.
Which meant meeting with like 10 people.
Yeah.
Council on Aging, receptionist office, and
Not good.
number one, I'm not doing that one again. And number two, in my opinion, you know, I just think of materiality, right?
Yep.
And I just think, you know, you got police, fire, DPW, like, at some point. You
Yep.
don't need to be meeting,
No, I
town
agree.
planner for an 85 grand budget that went up by $2,000. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not doing that area again, so I don't,
Okay.
but I'm just giving you my 2
So
cents.
fire, police,
Fire, police,
DPW,
DPW, library's big.
school and library.
schools,
Oh, Harvard
Harvard,
Mass, yeah.
But all those little ones,
Roy will do the school.
Yeah, historically, they-
Yeah, he does that.
I'm meeting for another year.
He's a school guy.
Punishment.
No, I think the liaisons are good because you get an inner view of how the budget's being put together. And frankly, if they're benchmarking, there are other things that needs a little bit of focused expertise, somebody's on that.
Yeah.
Um,
And can ask questions.
and obviously the caveat, if there is anything weird going on in any of those little departments, obviously you guys will flag it anyway, you know, but to me, those are kind of, no offense, kind of boring and. From a dollar.
There's not there's not that much flexibility.
It's not-
Right, it is what it
It is what it is.
There's like a salary, there's some expenses. You know, it's-
The board's point of view, there's not enough excitement there.
I didn't say that. Very respectful of all the departments.
Okay, so we're set with that. Updates from liaisons. Do you have any updates on the school?
School has been meeting with a collaboration meeting, another one this Friday, things are chugging along. More to follow,
Is Anna Mitchell on that?
yes,
Have you talked to
I
her?
had sat down and talked with her.
Thank you. Because I was supposed to connect you and I didn't.
Yep, no, we had a
Thank
good,
you.
good sit down.
Okay, good.
I did sit in on
Okay, yeah,
and there wasn't a lot on the agenda, but so I was kind of getting my feet wet and just seeing what their approach was.
It's probably, it's before you were formally approved this.
thought he's been it for the last 6 months. On the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust and the Manchester Housing Authority, they put out a request for proposal to redo those properties, and the return date is October 24th. It did include the conceptual plan for the DPW site, but with the caveat that
Subject
subject to approval by the town, yeah.
Just quick one connected to that, that housing what is it, behind the seaside cycle.
Oh, Powder House Lane. Powder House Lane.
Just keeping it at a 30,000 foot, because otherwise it'll go. Somehow, some way that got picked up by like some kind of nonprofit.
North
organization.
Shore,
to.
North Shore CDC,
Okay,
and people in
then-
town funded a piece of the purchase price.
so,
So it is affordable housing.
so net doesn't count.
If-
Those are-
Once they cross all the Ts and dot the Is,
Well,
it'll be 29 units.
eventually means.
Within a year.
Okay,
Well, they-
that's fine.
The people working on it say everything's been done, and it's been sitting in the town planner's desk.
But even if it's a year,
I don't know.
That's not interesting.
Okay.
but either way, leave timing aside, so 29 units, what is that? Yeah, what is this?
It's 2 years worth
2.5 years.
of progress towards the housing production plan.
So 11 a year is our number to show annual progress.
Okay.
If we were doing 11 a year, then we would not have had stream of it.
Fair enough, but just, I always think of that, isn't there's a magical 10%, right?
Yes.
Well,
So that's what I'm,
5.1.
but then you add in the 29, does that take us
I
to
think
like?
that the 10% is 239,
Thank you.
and I think we have 110,
115,
115, 110, 29,
Would you say 239?
239.
So if I take 30 divided by 239.
Only 100 units.
Yeah.
Right.
And if they get a bid on the housing, the senior housing, and can add units to that, that would count, but I think the timeline on that is pretty long.
Does that still include non-affordable housing too, that chase the ratio?
Who knows
We
what,
don't know.
we don't know,
He doesn't. include that.
the responses to the RFP will tell us that, what their plan is,
The responses will weigh that out.
if there are any responses.
This is way out of my wheelhouse, obviously, but it seems like there's miscommunication about where the logjam is, just.
Yeah, I-
Just get buttoned down because it's good, 11 a year, but obviously, if you said it 2.5 years, we just don't wanna let that fall through the cracks, right?
I'll find out. It's,
Yeah, because I'm getting a different view from the other side of the street.
Let me inquire.
We're chasing down.
That was not my understanding, but let me find out.
We don't have any minutes to review. Next meeting. So we have to officially vote on warrant articles, right?
Yes.
Once the warrant's closed.
So that'll be Monday.
When are you going to press on that? When are you printing those? Tuesday?
No. So I. What you, the easiest way is you make your recommendation on the floor.
Is that what we want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we already voted on all of the zoning issues,
Well, I voted to no.
take a position,
Right.
but we did that in June.
So then what's left to vote on?
The legal expenses and the ambulance.
Right.
I don't know if there's anything else.
No.
There's no citizen thing that has a financial impact.
No, there's one citizen
Right.
petition.
Yeah. To withdraw, to
The recall.
recall, select, be able to recall.
The recall process.
The legal one is like. Not even debate, like you just went it like. Basically, increase legal costs. Like,
Is there anything really controversial? I mean, obviously, it's not much of the planning stuff maybe,
But. Controversial.
Yeah. But it seems like the select one will, like dogs on the beach, will garner a huge amount of dialogue. And everybody will want to get to that and get home. Maybe, maybe.
What is the proposal?
To be able to recall members of the select board,
Uh,
or
it-
presumably
it-
planning
it-
board also.
Any elected position.
No, I was asking more about the dogs. What's the proposal?
No, I was just using that as. an
Oh,
analogy. I shouldn't have even said that.
A very.
Dogs on the beach.
Well, they don't pay attention to the dates. I was on the beach today,
Ah,
Dogs there, oh.
and they were last week. They didn't come near me, so
Was my dog.
I was just getting away from the hoe hammer.
It's.
Okay, anything else? So, oh, next meeting,
Yes, next meeting.
7th.
November.
or do we just,
Make a decision tonight or just make a decision at the recommendation from the floor.
recommendations?
And then. make-
Oh, yeah, we have to.
So we see 15 minutes before, so just post ahead of meetings.
Yeah.
And this would basically be approval to hit our free cash for this month.
That's not the same.
And then she-
Town meeting is on the 14th. Monday, the 14th.
What are we talking about? So,
Well, he was suggesting we meet on the seventh,
Not the week of the summer.
the week of the seventh.
Thank you for asking. I couldn't think why we were talking about the seventh.
Okay, so what's the
If you
decision?
wanted
Week
to meet
before?
prior to town meeting.
Do, yeah,
Yes, I got it.
do we want to meet the week of the seventh? To do our
No,
votes?
we want to go,
We want to meet on the 14th
yes,
prior to the town meeting.
yes,
That's fine.
yes.
Okay.
What time?
I don't know what time town meeting is, so I can't tell.
I'm assuming it'll be 6:30.
Just subtract 20 or 30 minutes from whatever I started.
6
Okay.
o'clock.
Yeah, aim for 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Assuming it's a 6:30 fire, we'll aim for sure.
How many, articles? Yeah, articles.
There's 14 planning articles, 15 or 14. And then these two,
Are these two
and
going
then
first?
the petition. So the planning was with it.
So if you had the handicap, what you were, we're looking at a 2.5 hour.
I think you're looking at 4 hours.
Well,
Maybe lucky to get through it in 1 night.
Yes, that's about my impression, yes.
I think enough people will call questions
Mhm.
to move along.
It'll be interesting to hear how tonight's open house went.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious.
Want to go to that, but.
Question, zone changes.
Knowing with an insider's view on how it's.
I was hoping to go live for 7, but it didn't happen.
where was that at the high school?
So some of the zoning articles are coming,
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
many of them.
but then the whole recall thing, that's gonna be a charge issue.
I don't know. I see that one sailing through.
Oh,
you do?
really?
Which way?
In favor.
Yeah.
People say, why not have the option?
But how long are the terms?
How long are they?
Three?
How
3-year
long?
terms.
3-year terms.
Yeah, so,
It
yes,
seems to me that by the time you do a recall, it's gonna be
The term
time
is
for a
almost
new
up.
election, yeah.
Yeah, but I think, like Greg said, like, it's better to have a lever mechanism there that you might never use, right? Better to have something you need than.
This is why,
that's what my gut
why
tells
we debated.
me.
Just a beautiful job of summarizing.
Okay, anything else?
No.
I make a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Chief, thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Do we like meeting person?
Yeah, I do. I do. I finally met Mike Pratt. I,
Bye.
you know, I feel very honored.
Call me tall, people.